I lingered in the long passageway to which this led, separating the front and back rooms of the third story, narrow, low, and dim, with only one little window at the far end, and looking with its 2 rows of small black doors all shut, like a corridor in some Bluebeard's castle. The laugh was as tragic, as preternatural a laugh as any I ever heard, but that it was a high room, and that no circumstance of ghostliness accompanied the curious cachinnation, but that neither scene nor season favoured fear, I should have been superstitiously afraid. Jane Eyre, page 122 to 123. Gothic Romance, a genre that has crept its way through the centuries and been revived and revised again and again. From classic to contemporary, its formulaic nature ought to have rendered it overdone and dull, but it seems that readers, viewers and players alike still crave that shivers down your spine sensation that only the Gothic can bring. My name is Jessica, and today I will be exploring the why behind this phenomenon. Gothic is a broad and widely interpreted genre, so for the purposes of this discussion, I will be focusing on the subgenre of Gothic Romance, with specific attention to 2 texts. Charlotte Bronte's classic novel Jane Eyre, first published in 1847, and the Fulbright Company's contemporary narrative presented in their video game Gone Home. Spooner has commented that Gothic has never been solely a literary genre. This too is true of Gothic Romance, from the halls of Ravenhurst Manor in Big Fish's Mystery Case Files to the streets of Ravenswood in the hit series Pretty Little Liars. Elements of Gothic Romance permeate texts that don't define themselves as Gothic as well as those that do. Let's get back to our 2 texts though. Frelik suggests that the affinity between Gothic stories and video games can be found in what Broderick has called megatext. This refers to the shared repertoire of locations, characters, and narrative scenarios that these texts share. So, what are these elements? Well, according to Frelik, we have locales, the location. In Gothic Romance, this is usually specifically a large house or estate, always named something foreboding. Characters. In Gothic Romance, we have the female heroine, and the dark and mysterious male love interest, who usually has a dark secret. And last but not least, plottings. These are the most variable elements. Typically, it's hauntings, curses from the past, or perversions, but more on these later. As Frelik notes, and as we will find out, these elements can and do change and evolve over time and space in local Gothic tradition. But let us examine Jane Eyre as a bedrock for these elements. Heroine. Heroine running from large mansion? Check. I was weeping wildly as I walked along my solitary way. Fast, fast I went like one delirious. Jane Eyre, page 422. The dangerous man. Dangerous yet alluring male love interest? Check. A wild look raised his brows, crossed his features. He rose, but he forbore yet. I laid my hand on the back of a chair for support. I shook, I feared, but I resolved. Jane Eyre, page 415. The large, isolated estate. Large, isolated named house? Check. Thornfield is a fine old hall, rather neglected of late years perhaps, but it is still a respectable place. Yet you know in the wintertime one feels dreary quite alone. Jane Eyre, page 129. Plottings. Hauntings and hidden secrets. Hauntings? Check. Secrets hidden in the attic? Check. What crime was this that lived incarnate in this sequestered mansion? What mystery that broke out, now in fire and blood, at the deadest hours of the night? What creature was it that, masked in an ordinary woman's face and shape, uttered the voice, now of a mocking demon? Jane Eyre, page 276. As we can see from these examples, Jane Eyre holds all the elements of the classic Gothic romance. Of course, the traditional plot wherein the story is resolved with the heroine settling in with her dangerous man and getting married is carried out in this narrative. When we move to Gone Home, however, we see what Frelik means when he highlights the tendency of Gothic texts to adapt to their times. Gone Home manages to revise and yet still hold on to the essential elements of a Gothic romance. Let's take a look. The heroine. While we play the game as Caitlin Greenbriar, The true heroine of this story is her sister Sam. Through the epistolary narrative, we uncover the story. The Dangerous Man. Here is something that's revised. Gone Home tells the love story between Sam and her girlfriend, Lonnie. Technically, there is no dangerous man. However, as homophobia was rampant in the 1990s, which is when the game is set, we could say, judging by Mr. and Mrs. Greenbrier's reaction, that the relationship takes the place of that between the heroine and the dangerous man. The large, isolated estate. Of course this is present. From the moment you start the game, there are some seriously spooky vibes coming from the Greenbrier house. Once you start exploring, you discover it was owned by an estranged uncle and is widely known by the neighbourhood kids as a haunted place. It also helps that, from the beginning, there are plenty of secret passages, a raging thunderstorm, and no other people to be seen. Not to mention that attic. Plottings, hauntings, and hidden secrets. This element is spectacularly revised in the game and illustrates brilliantly the point that Frelik makes about changing with the times. Frelik suggests that many Gothic video games can be analysed as autonomous narratives whose strong and original storylines address contemporary social and political anxieties. This is very true of the story we discover in Gone Home. In fact, a major part of the feeling of impending horror in the game is the locked attic. Now, as we know from Gothic tradition, horrible secrets usually are stored in an attic or a basement. As one makes their way through the game and unfolds the story, a horrible idea begins to emerge that perhaps the attic is hiding Sam's body. The notes and diary entries could be interpreted at some points as reading like a suicide note. Baldic, as quoted by Frelik, has suggested that Gothic is defined by its innate sense of claustrophobia, and in this story we not only derive this sensation from the inability to leave the house, but also a second-hand sensation garnered from Sam's journals, the claustrophobia and isolation felt as the end of high school closes in, the pressures of society loom over her, and she feels that she is trapped and has nowhere to run. Upon entering the attic at the end of the game, one realises what they have uncovered is not some ghost or ghastly sight awaiting them, but rather the end of Sam's story. She has run away to be with Lonnie. We find no physical horror, but rather a disturbing portrait of the very real horror of homophobia. As we can see from these two texts, so far apart in time and medium, the genre of Gothic romance lends itself to many modes, and yet remains true to its formulaic nature. The ways in which these elements can be morphed to suit different social circumstances and political issues is apparent through the examination of the revisions made in Gone Home. Yet the heart of the genre remains, a love story trapped in the confines of social and political monstrosities, burdened by ghoulish rules, just waiting to break free.